Hey guys, welcome to another episode. So today we're going to do an amputee Q&A. So I posted it up on my social media. I just wanted to see what some questions are that you've always wondered about what it's like to be an amputee. So I'll just start reading through the questions and then just kind of just replying with what I've gone through. So um, first question is, this is kind of one of my favorites because it kind of helped me push me back to being what we would, or what I would normally think as normal again. But the question was, how difficult was it to drive? And was it like relearning how to drive or adjusting your muscle memory? So, for those that don't know, I am a below the knee amputee on my right side. And so when I lost my foot, you don't get the opportunity to um, put your foot on the pedal anymore and then moving over to the brake. So I had to, during my recuperation, I had to figure out how I was going to be able to drive again. So because I don't have that ankle motion, I ended up having to learn how to move my foot up and down. So kind of using my knee to push forward on the foot itself. So with the prosthetic, it would just, as I'm moving the knee forward, it would be able to accelerate. Now, instead of moving my foot over this way or pivoting it over the brake, I would have to lift my foot up and then hover over the brake and then gradually push down. So it wasn't easy at first, but then once I got the repetition down, it just became a little bit more of like muscle memory to me. And fortunately, and no way am I endorsed, but there's a lot of technology that came in my Audi S3 that helped me be a better driver. And I'll talk about that in another video in the future. But those are kind of things that that I'm pretty thankful for. I mean, not only with technology, but just being able to learn how to drive again. So some of it was muscle memory, and the other part is just readjusting to like certain patterns. But when it comes down to it, driving to me, there's definitely a lot more focus and concentration into it. The next question is, what does it feel like? Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it feels like a total change of, like, I'm not a different person. I can do 95% of everything still. The only things that have changed is just my routines have changed, and there's certain like activities that I can't do anymore. At least for now and the time being. But with a prosthetic, I can't hop in the shower with it. It takes me a little bit longer to get ready during the day. You can't wear your prosthetic to sleep. But it's just kind of learning how to be able to shower again. I'm not able to stand in the shower, so I'll have like a bench to sit on. What took me as like maybe 10-15 minutes to get out of bed in the morning is different now because it can take me an hour or a little bit longer. So you kind of have to learn how to readjust your life to things like that. But I mean, so far, other than that, it's not any different than being a normal person. It's just I have a different routine than most. And then as far as like another question is, does it bother you when someone else makes an amputee joke, or can only you joke about it? Well, at first, it was one of those moments where you just kind of had to say like too soon. But later on, I did learn to joke about it. I mean, sometimes when people say things like putting your best foot forward and my response is like, what if I don't have a best foot anymore, or is my left foot okay? My last video I mentioned, when I went through like the airport and TSA was patting me down, I said, go ahead, I'm not gonna feel it. So you just kind of learn how to look at like the positive things in life, and just keep pushing forward. So the other part was, do you dream if you have a foot still? Some of it, I don't know. I've never noticed these things, but I do. I mean, I've had a couple dreams where I've wanted to be normal again. What most perceive as normal. There's not a day that goes by where I don't wish that I had my foot still. But it is what it is. So you just kind of learn to take that in stride and move forward in your life. This is definitely a good one, and I joke about it too. So, do I get half off on shoes? And I guess I can include socks, but unfortunately, no. I have tried to work that, but that doesn't happen. And so, even though you are an amputee, if you don't have the other foot, doesn't mean I don't wear a sock still. Doesn't mean I don't wear shoes. I mean, I still have a foot, even though it's prosthetic. So, kind of show you. I mean, I still wear socks on this. I still put a shoe on it just as normal. But, I mean, nothing's different. So, it's not like there's like any specialties for that. There is a different way I do put on a shoe. And I do have to rely more on a shoehorn to be able to pop that shoe on. But other than that, there's also like the ankle adjustment of your foot. Most of them are static and they don't change position. So it's hard to change the foot because it's always like this and it doesn't move. There are exceptions though, where there are microprocessor feet where they have between 27 to 30 degrees of front and back movement, so it's able to pivot. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. But other than that, I mean, shoes and socks, I still wear them like normal. So, great question. When you take your prosthetic off at the end of the day, is it more satisfying than a woman taking off her bra at the end of the day? It can be pretty restrictive. And then do you take your prosthetic off as soon as you go home? Well, most of the time I wear my prosthetic most of the day. So as soon as I'm up in the morning or after I've taken my shower, my prosthetic goes on. And I'll walk around like normal. And generally, right before going to bed, I'll take it off because you can't sleep with your prosthetic on. But it can be relieving, but on a good system, it can be comfortable too. So it just depends on your prosthetist who makes the socket, who makes the foot, even down to the liner itself. So basically, the liner is like what goes over your residual limb. That attaches to the socket itself. But it can be. I mean, you do sweat in them. It just depends on your level of activity. But sometimes you end up in the middle of the course of the day, you end up taking it off to wipe the sweat up, or just to even let your skin breathe a little bit. So. And then we talked a little bit about it, but do you wear your prosthetic when swimming? So, unfortunately, most prosthetics aren't designed to go into water or even shower. Now, there are certain prosthetics out there, like the Aqua Leg, that's designed to have water come out of a certain like slit in the prosthetic itself. But most of them don't go underwater. Let's see. The Freedom Connects This is a microprocessor foot. That one has a little bit of resilience to being underwater, but again, most prosthetic feet are not designed to do that. So when it comes down to it, most prosthetics, if they were going to like go to the pool or hop into a hot tub, you know, they'll either have to have a custom-made like shower or water prosthetic, or the other part too is there's a certain kind of like a long bag that goes over your leg itself that creates more of a seal where your existing end is, so that way the water doesn't leak in. What kind of prosthetic do I have? Well, so this is, I'll start with the foot. And with the foot here, this is an youre Proflex. So I'll take, if you can see it, so it has a hydraulic built into it, so it gives me more of that ankle motion. But this is one of the newest feet that have come out for people to be able to walk better on. This is where it has like I believe 27 degrees of front and backward movement. So and then here inside, it's hard to get my pant leg up, but this is the socket itself. And then with this part, this is the Limb Logic vacuum system. So it's active and it's always constantly monitoring the pressure inside the socket. I'll tell you a little bit more in another video where I'll explain most of this stuff, but this is the Limb Logic system itself to control keeping my limb inside. And then most of them are either vacuum or there's a pin system where on the liner itself there's a pin and it locks right in. So that's how it keeps your residual limb into the socket. But for the most part, the vacuum just sucks it in for me. So that is kind of the anatomy of a prosthetic or below the knee. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to talk about too was on that same note. There's different levels of activity. So K1 and K2, kind of more for like elderly, and then I would fall under of what we would call K3, where I'm still active and still moving around quite often. And then so just kind of like walking or like power walking. And then there's K4, which is the highest. So this is gonna be like high impact, where it's like running or jogging, where or even like more high impact sports like skiing and stuff. So the prosthetic foot, like say the running blade, like you've seen on TV for like the Paralympians, those are definitely more of what we call like K4. So great question. Do you have any goals for yourself when it comes to your amputation? Like something you would want to accomplish mentally or physically? So one thing that I've learned during my recovery was it's okay to have those moments where you are depressed, where you think about like, well, you know, what's going to happen next? But I found that the more I thought about it, and the more I just nothing. I mean, it's like spilt milk. It's not worth crying over. And you just have to learn how to pick yourself back up and to start moving and walking again. And that was one of the things that I pushed myself on. Even from a physical therapy, I just kept telling myself, you know, you got to keep going. And being in a home where there was quite a bit of elderly there too, it was depressing. And you know, you can spend all that time feeling sorry for yourself, but at the end of the day, whatever my physical therapist said, I tripled that workload. You know, if she said do 20 reps, I did 60. If she said do 20 pounds, I'll do 60. You know, it forced me to push myself to work harder and to train harder. And at the end of the day, I just wanted to go home. You know, there was that feeling of like being homesick too. You know, I spent about I think 3 weeks in rehab, and and I spent about a month in the hospital during my surgery. So at that point, home like never felt better. So, but I guess at the end of the day too, where I'm going with this is, when I push myself, I want to relive and grasp what normal life I have again. And now going through this, my next motivation, my next goal is, I'm not going to stop being who I am. I'm not going to stop educating others and talking to others about my whatever happened in the past. And sometimes it can be hard, but overall at the end of the day is I want to be able to educate more people, and I want to be able to share my experience with others. So. Let's see. Have you ever met anyone your age that has gone through something similar? Unfortunately, I have not, because everyone comes in all shapes and sizes, different ethnicities, different ages, and when you look at the statistics of even amputees, whether it's like someone that's missing a finger or missing a whole hand, missing a leg, missing a foot, whether it's, regardless, I mean, if you have a body part that's removed, you are considered an amputee. Then, on top of that, the statistics are, 1 in 200 Americans are amputees. So, it's hard to tell sometimes, but at the same time too, with someone that's like 1 in 200, it's really hard to tell who is. So finding someone in common with me really hasn't been common. But going to my prosthetist, I do end up meeting quite a bit of amputees. So there's a little bit of that kindred spirit with them, where I have that ability to talk to them with the same, almost the same experiences. So, all right. Are you hesitant to show people your stump? Well, I mean, honestly, I'm not uncomfortable with it, but I mean, it's been a little bit over a year. But for me, I think, and this is just a personal opinion, I think it's weird that people want to see. I mean, I think, like I said, I'm not completely uncomfortable with it if someone asks me, but if someone, let's say if I had if my leg was still like 100% complete, if someone wanted to see that, I would think it's kind of weird and creepy. So for someone to do that to an amputee, I think it's just as weird and creepy. But joking aside, I mean, I'm comfortable with it, but I just think it's weird. One of the things that people ask about is, do you still have like phantom pain, and does it ever go away? That was kind of one of the first things that I experienced after my amputation. There was a lot of like surging pain through my right leg, and it was kind of like needles just shooting through it, and the pain was just like teeth grinding, like painful. There were times where I had to ask to have like some kind of medicine to dumb down like my nerve receptors, where it wasn't quite as bad. But at the end of the day, you learn to live with the pain, and sometimes it's not even pain. You feel like your foot is still there, but I would say it's like more of a phantom sensation. They say the more traumatic or like how much pain your foot was or your body part was before the amputation, your body remembers that. But as time passes, it's still there, but not quite so much. But for me, it almost feels like I can still feel my foot. I can still feel like it moves, but it's like in a sling, or like it's like it can't move, like something is holding it there, then and restricting the movement. So you know, that kind of helps, at least in some ways, because even with the phantom sensations, it kind of reminds me of like where my foot should be, because since I can't feel out of the prosthetic, it still gives me an idea of like, you know, what my normal walks or strides should be like. So but yeah, in short, I mean, it never goes away, but you know, it doesn't become as painful as it used to be when it was you know, right at the beginning of the amputation. Let's see. How much did your leg weigh? So from what I understand, you know, if it's below the knee, it can be from between like 10 to 15 pounds. But there's a lot that happens, because when they remove your lower half, I mean, basically they fillet your leg, you know, from the calf, and so, you know, they remove a lot of that, and then there's a certain flap that they end up like stitching and sewing over the bottom, for your residual limb. So, but you know, a lot of prosthetics nowadays weigh less, especially with carbon fiber designs. But you know, they try to get as close. But you know, generally about 10-15 pounds is what your lower, like a below knee amputee would have on average. Another one is, do you after because you lost your leg, would you ever surgically have one attached, or will you be fine with having a prosthetic leg? So, you know, for me, I always think about like, what would it be like if we could, you know, magically or scientifically grow another leg? And I'll tell you, I would give anything to, and this is, sorry, just 100%, just 100% being real. I would give anything to have you know, a real foot again. To be able to be, you know, what I consider normal, to be able to run and to jump, to appreciate the small things, to be able to go swimming with my friends, to be able to drive again normally. You know, you don't realize like what it's like to be normal until you've had that taken away from you. But if I were to get another leg, to have it surgically reattached, oh yeah, hell yeah, I would love for that to happen. But you know, as technology also increases, you know, I try to keep on top of like certain technologies, whether it's the regrowth of a limb, you know, through stem cell research, or even 3D bioprinting of a body part, and then even looking at bionics themselves and seeing how they integrate with a body. That's something that I continue to keep an eye on, because you know, we are at a great age where technology and bionics, you know, where the human anatomy, at some point, they'll be able to bond together, or if not, you know, we can still grow a body part. So, I mean, with so much, there's a lot of hope out there still. In short, sorry guys, this locked out on me. Will you ever engage in activities that need you to be more vigorous? You know, I think as I get more used to this, you know, I still haven't learned how to run, but then I don't have a running leg. But that is something that I have put on my bucket list to do again. So Once I am able to, and I feel more confident in myself and my abilities, I definitely would like to be able to run again. And I think there are certain ones out there, especially looking at like companies like youre or Freedom. Definitely, they're able to. I mean, with so much selection out there, there's no end to what kind of prosthetic foot I can use to run. So, you know, that's definitely something I've taken a look into. When you were recovering, did you ever ponder suicidal thoughts? You know, there's a lot of, that was one thing that I think a lot of people have said to me, that if they were in the same position that I was, they wouldn't know how to react. But, you know, going back to earlier, I mentioned that while my life could have ended, and you know, I thank every day that I'm alive that it never happened. But I learned that you make the best of what you do with every day moving forward. So, you know, never once did I think like, oh, I wanted to kill myself. That's just, it's not the way to end things. And now I want to be able to live my life to the fullest, whether it is working on my cars or or even educating others. You know, I feel like I still haven't done enough with my life, and I think going through this traumatic experience has given me more of a reason to live for others. You know, because there's always that sense of hope that you have, that I have, and that I would like to instill into others. And you know, if there ever was a chance, I didn't have the support during my recovery because I didn't want to tell my family. I didn't want to put them through the heartache. You know, so I was on my own. And if I had the chance to do it all over again, I would go through the same hardship, because now learning what I've gone through, if I had the opportunity to help someone get through the same situation with me, I'd like to be there to help them do the same. One of the things that people ask is it hard to talk about your amputation? And at first, it was extremely hard. Sometimes it still is, but I think that when it gets to the point where if it becomes overwhelming, I do get moments of a little bit of PTSD, and I don't like to relive that moment over and over and over again. So it becomes a little bit hard for me to explain, and sometimes, and I don't mean to, but I do end up becoming a little bit defensive. But I think that overall, later on, as I tend to work my way through this, I'll be able to become more accepting of it, but it has to be on my own accord. And I just feel that sometimes when people continue to ask and poke and prod, it's kind of like my fight or flight. And when you're pushed into a corner, you tend to go for your primal instincts, and you just want to fight your way out of a situation. So so that's how I've, you know, after a little bit over a year, it's how I've handled things. Sometimes, not that I'm proud of it, but you know, be mindful when you are asking an amputee about their situation. You know, it's not something that they like to live through. So while it may be casual to you, it's definitely something that you should be very mindful of when you talk to people about their traumatic experiences, because, you know, honestly, no one likes to live through that situation over and over and over again. You know, that's kind of like you know, with my healing process, I think a lot of it was accepting that fact and being able to move quickly enough. No pun intended, but I think my body caught up before my mind, and during my recovery, going back to work, there were moments of stress where I was not able to handle, and I don't think my mind had fully caught up yet. Most of the time, I felt I was a little bit angry at the situation, angry at myself. The whole emotional process has been like a roller coaster ride. I mean, it was up and down for the first like 3 to 6 months, and it certainly, if I could go back and tell myself, I shouldn't have gone back to work right when it was physically okay for me, but these are things you learn as time goes on. So it definitely wasn't an easy recovery process. Emotionally, I cried. I let myself just wallow in self-pity. Most of the time I had strong moments, but there were times where I had that moment of I was very susceptible to being just human. I had a weak moment, and that's okay, because people take loss and pain differently. But it doesn't make me any less of a person. But it's just things I learned through my through my recovery. And then last question is, how long is the prosthesis supposed to last? Sorry. So normally a prosthesis is supposed to last about a year and a half, sometimes even 3. For me, because I'm so new at this, I am always trying different technologies. So I've tried a couple prosthetic feet already. This is my 3rd socket I've been through. But it depends, because as you become more, I'd like to call it veteran. I guess as your residual limb tends to shrink more because of atrophy, you tend to shift in how you fit into prosthetics or into the socket itself. So as time goes on, I will probably end up going through definitely many more sockets, because my residual limb is always going to be shrinking. Then how do you control perspiration and prosthesis? One of the funny facts is sometimes your sweat glands, they end up adjusting themselves. So depending on the person, it's not 100%, but sometimes they do end up shutting themselves off. And with me, I don't perspire that much. But in the case that it does, or it feels like it happens, it is something where I just take a rag, and when I take my liner off, then I just pat my residual limb down, dry it off, and then I also dry the liner off too, and then I put the liner back on. So now, if it was in the case where I was running for a like a triathlon, I would be definitely sweating quite a bit. But there's also companies out there that have created liners that are able to let you perspire and just kind of aerate the extra humidity out, so it dries faster. But there's definitely certain kinds of liners for everyone, whether there's ones with lotion, whether there's ones without lotion. Some people have certain allergies to that. But there's almost a liner to everything, you know. And again, there's liners that have pins. There's liners without pins, depending on the system that you end up going with. Whether it's a locking mechanism or whether it's like active or passive vacuum. So, you know, again, there's a bunch of things out there that are out. You know, the liners. But at the end of the day, I guess long story short, controlling your perspiration just has to do with your activity levels. So it's no different than being a normal person. I mean, you're going to sweat a lot more the more active you are. But that's pretty much it. So anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed the Q&A. Keep an eye out for additional videos coming out. You know, I think the next one has either been going to be either me driving and videotaping while I drive. Or the other one, a couple people have asked, they want to see what my build looks like, or even down to like the next DJ video I do, just to, you know, show everyone I'm still capable of living a normal life. So stay tuned, and I will see you guys next time.